devotees may also hear the glories of the Lord. Such devotees have no desire for material gain. They are conducted by one single desire, to go back to Godhead. This awaits them in due course on quitting the material body. Because they have the highest aim of life, going back to Godhead, they are never envious of anyone, nor are they proud of being eligible to go back to Godhead. Their only business is to chant and remember the holy name, fame, and pastimes of the Lord, and according to personal capacity, to distribute the message for others' welfare without motives of material gain. Om Jnana Timanantasya Jnanam Janashalakaya Chakshurun Vinitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pungam Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Madgavirapi Gopala Sweetpuryat Kripayayadi Tadaivasan Payaha Pitva Hrishi Ustat Priyajanaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Here, this is a wonderful verse. Even the words themselves are beautiful. And we have very deep comments given by Srila Prabhupada in his purport. Sridhar Swami in his commentary on this verse also says, Anantyasa namani pathan anavaratam granam hadatapas Jaktaladjo vimatsaro jato smiti sheshaha. He says that hatatrapa, the word trapa means to be perplexed or to have shame. And Sridhar Swami, particularly, he is glossing this word as tyaktaladjo, to having given up all sense of shame. Sometimes when we're publicly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, we may feel embarrassed, or we may feel shame to put ourselves forward to say something in glorification of the Lord. Before a public audience, we don't know who's listening. And so here he says, Hadatrapam, indicates that he's given up all such considerations, and he's just glorifying, repeating what he's heard from his own spiritual masters. And very, very nice words are used here. He says, Tushtamana, he's going about with a satisfied mind. In this Chati Shloki Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. The devotees of the Lord, they are satisfied and they enjoy. It is not redundant to say that. On the face of it, it may seem as if it means more or less the same thing, but it doesn't. He says what it means is that while we are sadhaka devotees, practicing devotees, aspiring devotees, we're santushta, we are very satisfied to have the opportunity to engage in service. If you live in Xinjiang, or if you live in Karachi, you may not have this opportunity, but we have this opportunity now. And so the devotees are very, very fortunate, and they know it. So they're grateful, in other words, and they feel very satisfied. And then when we actually awaken love of Godhead, and we're engaged in a devotional service in our Siddha Deha, which we'll hear about in a moment, then at that time, Ramanticha, then we can really enjoy the nectar of Krishna consciousness. So the word Tushtamana here, it kind of suggests that, at least to my mind. And Gata Spreha means all material desires, they've already gone away. Nirmana mohajita sanga dosha ityadi, as Krishna says in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita. There's no more any question. Srila Prabhupada gives the example, if a man is very, very wealthy, he doesn't have to worry about small petty things that disturb the minds of ordinary people. So similarly, a devotee is done with all these material desires. And what is he doing as a result? Kalam pratikshan. He's just waiting to die. That sounds terrible to a materialistic person. They can't believe, they think, what's wrong with you that you have such negative consciousness? But for a devotee, it's not negative. Devotees looking forward to death, just waiting for the opportunity to die. We'll explain a little bit more about that. Our acharyas explain. And vimada, vimatsaraha. Vimatsara, it's obvious. He doesn't have any envy. And vimada, why he doesn't have envy? Because he's not intoxicated. Mada means proud or intoxicated. So we're not, gata spriha also suggests the same thing. Once you come to the Brahman level, Brahmabhuta level of consciousness, then you can actually engage in devotional service in a very strong way, and none of these things will obstruct any longer. Obstruction. We'll hear some more about that in a moment as well. Okay, so kalam pratikshan, just awaiting. It's like we hear from Lord Brahma as well. Jiveta yo mukti padesa dayabhak. If you have an inheritance, all you have to do is stay alive, and you're going to get that inheritance, most likely. So similarly for a devotee, all you have to do is remain in Krishna consciousness and live out your life in Krishna consciousness in these ways. Travel throughout the world, preach the guhyani, bhadrani, kritani activities of the Lord, smaran, constantly remembering those things, and do so with tushtamana, satisfied mind, gata spriha, without material desires, vimada, without being proud, and vimatsara, without being envious. If you're not proud, then there's no question of envious. Envy only affects those persons who are cultivating pride. So, Narad Muni was above this, and we will hear more about this. Srila Prabhupada, here he says in one of the sentences in his purport, this, to go back to Godhead, awaits them in due course on quitting the material body. That is the significance of the word kalam pratikshan. Let's look and see what some of the acharyas have said about this. Jiva Goswami says, kalam tat kripavasaram pratikshamanoham. I'm just waiting for the occasion when the Lord grants me his full mercy. That's how he interprets the word kalam. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, on the other hand, kalam pratikshan means sakalo me kada bhavishyati yatra tat parshadam yasyami. When will that day be mine, that I can become a personal associate of the Lord? Iti bhagavat parshado bhavishyami. When will I become a personal associate of the Lord? He's praying like this. This is called siddhi lalasa, according to Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas. Hankering after some specific professional stage in devotional service and hoping that I can get the mercy of the Lord, or more likely from one of his devotees. So, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has very nicely also pointed out, how is it that he goes about vimatsara, vimada, konyo varako matsamo ityevam madamatsaro mama nabhutam. I had no pride nor selfishness because I always thought, who is there who can be more fallen than me? This brings to mind a couple of verses originally from Padma Purana, but quoted throughout so many places by our acharyas. Bhaktirasamrita Sindhu, Bhajana Rahasya, I think Bhakti Sandarbha also. Matsamo nasti papatma naparadhi chakaschina parihare pilo jome kim bruve purushottama yuvati nam yatha yunam cha yuvatau yatha mano abhiramatan tadvan mano me ramatan tvai. There's nobody equal to me. There's no sinful person like me, he says. And there's no one who is such an offender as me. Parihare pila jome. what am I to say, Purushottam? You have to just, overlook all these things. They're so shameful for me. And yet still I'm shameless. Yuvatinam yathayunim ityadi. He says, just as a young boy is looking upon a young girl, and young girl will look upon the young boy. In that way, please allow my mind to be fixed on you and on you alone. Such a wonderful verse. So this is the consciousness. All this comes about in my mind, at least, by the words trapa, hata trapa, without shame. So it brings to mind another reference as well. Kamadidam katana katitha palita duraniteshas tesham jata maina karuna natrapa no pashantihi utsra jaitan athayadupate sampradam labdha buddhis twam ayata sharanam abhayam mam niyam shvatmadasye. I've come to your shelter. I've recently been awakened in my intelligence, and I've realized that for so many days, for so many years, for so many lifetimes, I've been chasing after all these things beginning with kama, kamadi, and they've engaged me without end, but they've never shown me any mercy, and nor have I ever felt shameful about this even. But now I'm giving all these things up the best as I can, at least forcing myself by dint of intelligence, if nothing more spontaneous than that. And I'm begging you now, Mam Niyum Shvat Madasya, when we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, we should have this mood. Vimado Vimatsaraha. This was Narad Muni's example. He is at the head of our sampradaya. He is the main acharya in terms of bhakti. He's the author of Narad Pancharatra. He is the author of Narad Bhakti Sutras, translated by Srila Prabhupada. So, Guhyani Bhadrani Kritani, the words are used here. These describe that Krishna Katha. What does it consist of? What that Narad Muni is remembering, according to Jiva Goswami. Guhyani means Gopyani, Bhadrani means Sarvottamani, and Kritani means Prayasyadivi Saha Prema Paripati Mayalila. In other words, he's remembering the activities of the Lord in association with his dearmost devotees, activities that are redolent of the ways of pure love and are therefore the most exalted and transcendental. And Guhyani, they are confidential. Gopyani is the way that Jiva Goswami glosses this. Gopi. In Vrindavan, we have gopis. Gopas and gopis. Gopa also means to hide something. Gopa. Just like you go to the hundi in the temples in Vrindavan, sometimes it says Gupta Dan. You don't want people to see what you're giving. So, Gopyani, Gopi means, why are they called gopis? There's different derivations here. According to Mahavishnu Maharaj, the late and great lamented Mahavishnu Maharaj, Dwarka Nivasi, he used to say Gopi means they drink through their senses all of the wonderful activities and name, fame, form, qualities, etc. of Lord Krishna. Pina, to drink. That's folk etymology. But in Sanskrit, gopi also means to care for cows. Gopa, gopala, same. Feminine, gopi. But it also means to hide something. Gopi, why are they hiding? What are they hiding? They're hiding Krishna. From whom are they hiding Krishna? Kamsa. Vasudeva took Krishna from Mathura to Vrindavan, to Gokula, and we all know the story, he exchanged the children for Krishna's protection, as if Krishna needs protection from Kamsa. The great hero of the Yadu dynasty is being protected by cowherd women by having taken shelter of their laps. So this is all indicated here by the word gopyani. Guhyani gopyani, yani bhadrani sarvottamani kritani prayasyadibihi saha. Along with his dearmost devotees, and it's feminine, means most likely he's talking about the gopis. So these things, Narad Muni, is smaran, remembering. Smaraneva, Jiva Goswami says, natu prakashayan. He's not revealing it externally. It's written between the lines of his books. Narad Bhakti Sutra. Even Srimad Bhagavatam is more explicit, but the real essence of bhakti and Krishna's leelas, these things are very confidential, guhyani. So we can get this only through pure devotional service by the blessings of the spiritual master. Therefore, kevalam kalam tat kripavasaram pratikshamanoham, he says. I'm just waiting for that time that the Lord shows me his mercy. Okay, so let's move on. Text 27. Evam krishnamater brahman nasaktasya amalatmanaha kala pradura bhutkale tadit sodamani yatha. Very nice. And so, Brahman Vyasadeva, in due course of time, I, who was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna and who therefore had no attachments, being completely freed from all material taints, met with death, as lightning and illumination occur simultaneously. Srila Prabhupada writes, to be fully absorbed in the thought of Krishna means clearance of material dirts and hankerings. Right off the bat, in the first sentence, Prabhupada lets us know, what is your priority? First of all, clean up your act. Anartha nivritti. This is the natural effect of devotional service. It's not the end of devotional service, but it has to happen first. And then he gives the analogy we've mentioned already. As a very rich man has no hankerings for small, petty things, so also a devotee of the Lord, Krishna, who is guaranteed to pass on to the kingdom of God, where life is eternal, fully cognizant and blissful, naturally has no hankerings for petty material things, which are like dolls or shadows of the reality and are without permanent value. That is the sign of spiritually enriched persons. Test. We will be tested, and we also have to test others. So Srila Prabhupada is telling us, what is the sign of a person who is spiritually advanced? He's detached, not even interested in these material things. And in due course of time, when a pure devotee is completely prepared, all of a sudden the change of body occurs, which is commonly called death. And for the pure devotee, such a change takes place exactly like lightning, and illumination follows simultaneously. That is to say, a devotee simultaneously changes his material body and develops his spiritual body by the will of the Supreme. Even before death, a pure devotee has no material affection due to his body's being spiritualized like a red-hot iron in contact with fire. Now, in this verse, sometimes this question is raised. What exactly does this mean? Tarit sodamani yatha. Like lightning and lightning at the same time. It seems to be redundant, but it isn't. So there are some words that are significant in this verse, and our acharyas have explained. First of all, we have in line 3, kalaha pradurabhut kale. Kala kale. Any elementary level student of Sanskrit knows you cannot have redundance anywhere. It's just not allowed. And so especially Vyasadeva is not expected to put in words that are not necessary. So there must be some significance here to these two words, which seem to be the same word. In the first case, kala means death. And in the second case, Srila Prabhupada, I'm reading his synonyms, he says it means time, in the course of time. So Sridhar Swami says, Kale swavasare. We've already mentioned this. What occasion is he waiting for? His own occasion. The occasion of what? The occasion of receiving mercy from the Lord. We've already heard. It means mrityu pradurabhut. avirbhuva. He died. He left his body. Akasmat pradur bhave drishtanta tarit iveti sodamini iti. So the example to show the illumination that occurs when this happens for a devotee, he's using this terms. Tarit sodamini, just like lightning. He gives a few interpretations here, but Jiva Goswami says, Kala means tat kripavasara, the occasion of receiving the Lord's mercy. Kale means prarabdha kshaye, the destruction of prarabdha karma. This is very significant. Yatha vigraha kshaye tarit sodamaniti. Go balivardanyayena cha anadhika artham idam. This is Jiva Goswami says. Kala means the occasion of receiving the Lord's mercy occurred. And kale means upon the destruction of all the prarabdha karma. We have various kinds of karma, we know. Prarabdha karma and aprarabdha karma. That karma which we experience in this particular incarceration, in this particular lifetime, that karma which allows us to remain within this material mind-body complex, that is called prarabdha karma. When that prarabdha karma is destroyed, one has to leave the body because there's no longer any karma to keep one in place within the material body. So that's death, prarabdha kshayi, the destruction of prarabdha karma. And this raises a question because this is not, the verse doesn't actually say that. The verse actually says, arabdha karma. Not this verse, another verse says. Maybe I should wait. But anyway, yeah, let's wait about that. And then he goes on to say the words tarit and sodamani are used to indicate the sense of removing an obstacle. And then he says it's go balivardanyaya, like the logic of a cow and a bull. Sometimes we say cows, but it's understood within that herd of cows there are going to be some bulls also. And sometimes vice versa. So here it's like that. Tarit sodamini, that's how he takes it. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Kale means at the time when the gross and the gross material body was destroyed. And as far as these two words at the same time, he says it's like if you say the king is coming, that means the time for the king's arrival has come as well. It's not exactly redundant, but Ekasyam sodaminyam tathaivanya sodamini katachit yatha bhavati tathaiva mama pancha bhautika deha bhanga kale eva parshada deha prapti kale abhud ityartha. The meaning is that at the time of dissolving both my gross and subtle material bodies, that time that I was waiting for expectantly for a long time finally arrived, and I got the body of one of the Lord's eternal associates at the same time. This is the point. Okay. In other words, the disappearance of the material body on one hand and the attainment of the spiritual body simultaneously made their appearance, closely connected, just like subject and predicate in a sentence. They happen more or less at the same time. And he gives an example. It's like sometimes you see two flashes of lightning, but they're so close together that you can't make out any difference. That's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. So in the same way, just when it was time for him to give up the material body, means the prarabdha karma had run out. So at the same time, the revelation, we should say, of his spiritual body was also completely perfect. Lightning and illumination. Or as we say, from our perspective, Kirtanareva Krishnasya Mukta Sangha Param Vrajesh. Two things. One is to give up the empty thing, the material thing, and the other thing is to embrace that spiritual ideal. Text 28. Prayujyamani maitam shuddham bhagavatim tanam adabta karma nirvano nyapadat pancha bhaudika. Same idea is being continued here. Prayujyamani. Prayujyamani means having been awarded, but it actually means being joined already. Prayujya, yuj, yoga, sanyoga. So, what was he joined to? Tam shuddham bhagavatim tanam, the spiritual body, fit for being an associate of the Lord. And adata karma nirvana. This is the problematic phrase here. Why doesn't it say pradabdha karma nirvana? The cessation of pradabdha karma. Why does it not say that? We should ask this. Having been awarded a transcendental body befitting an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I quit this body made of 5 material elements and thus acquired fruitive results. All acquired fruitive results, karma, stopped. Purport. Informed by the personality of Godhead that he would be awarded a transcendental body befitting the Lord's association, Nada got his spiritual body as soon as he quit his material body. It seems as if Prabhupada is saying they happen simultaneously, but Prabhupada is actually saying 2 things at once in this purport. So listen carefully. This transcendental body is free from material affinity and invested with 3 primary transcendental qualities, namely eternity, freedom from the material modes, and freedom from reactions of fruitive activities. The material body is always afflicted with the lack of these 3. A devotee's body becomes at once surcharged with the transcendental qualities as soon as he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. It acts like the magnetic influence of a touchstone upon iron. The influence of transcendental devotional service is like that. Therefore, change of the body means stoppage of the reaction of 3 qualitative modes of material nature upon the pure devotee. So this is the second definition of death. The first is that when the prarabdha karma runs out, your material body will fall. And the second one is that when the modes of material nature stop acting on you. We have to bookmark these 2 definitions because they're significant in this verse. Therefore, there are many instances of this in the revealed scriptures. Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj and many other devotees were able to see the personality of Godhead face to face, apparently in the same body. This means that the quality of the devotee's body changes from material to transcendence. That is the opinion of the authorized Goswamis via the authentic scriptures. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that beginning from the Indragopa germ up to the great Indra, king of heaven, all living beings are subject to the laws of karma and have to suffer and enjoy the fruitive results of their own work. Only the devotees are exempt from such reactions by the causeless mercy of the supreme authority, the personality of Godhead. Karnamani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam govindamani purusham tamaham bhajami. This is the verse Prabhupada is paraphrasing. Brahma Samhita chapter 5, text 54. Karmani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. Bhakti bhajam, for those who are participating in the process of bhakti, karmani nirdahati. Their karmas are all burnt up. Maybe not all burnt up, but mostly burnt up. Nashta prayeshu. Everybody else has to be awarded a karma bandhana rupa phala. Everyone else has to participate in that. Bhajanam. Swakarma bandhana rupa phala bhajanam. That is the law of material nature. It doesn't matter whether you're Indra or whether you're a coronavirus germ. It makes no difference. You are subject to your karma. But for the devotees, not so. The Krishna is directly overseeing them and minimizing their karmas as he sees fit. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Okay. Sridhar Swami says, yes. Ya Bhagavati Bhagavat Parshad Rupa Shuddha Sattva Maitanuhu Pratishruta Tam prati bhagavata mai prajamane niyamane arabdham yat karma tam nirvanam samaptam yasya arabdha karma no nirvanam eva yasyeti va. So, however you take it, the Narad Muni is describing how he got a spiritual body. And Sridhar Swami and all the acharyas commenting on this, they draw our attention back to text number 24, two, somewhat, 3, 4 verses ago. Hitvadyam imam lokam ganta majjanatamasi. The Lord promised, Narad, giving up this deplorable material world, you will come back to me, basically. You'll become one of my people. Majjanatamasi. That was his promise. And Narad Muni is saying how this promise was fulfilled. He got this Shuddha Deha. This is called the Siddha Deha also. Devotees who practice devotional service in pure devotional service, then they get this Bhagavat Parshada Rupa, which is Shuddha Sattvamayi, a body that is pure goodness, beyond the modes of material nature, and suitable for being an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is what devotees are waiting for at death. But you don't have to wait until death to develop this body. This is the point that Sridhar Swami concludes here. Very significant words pointed out also by other acharyas. Anena parshada tanunam akarnamarabdhatvam shuddhatvam nityatvam ityadi suchitam bhavati. He's suggesting that for those who are the Lord's own associates, the prarabdha karma, all karmas, everything else has already been wiped clean, and they're eternally pure now. So, Krishna promised, consequently, you'll go on to become my associate in the transcendental world after giving up the present deplorable material worlds. The commentators here, Sridhar Swami says, avadyam. The world is described as avadyam. Unmentionable, avadyam. In other words, nindyam, he says, blasphemable, deplorable material world. This thing we give up. And what do we get in exchange? Majjanatam, matparshadatam. You become my own associate. Vishwanath Chakravarti says the same thing. Adirghaya alpayapi avadyam nindyalokam sangsarika janavasam tribhuvanameva tyaktva. After a short period of time, not a long time, you give up this unmentionable, deplorable world, which is the abode of all worldly people, 3 worlds, and majjanatam, matparshadatvam gamishyasi. You will come to me as one of my own parshadas, my own associates. Okay. Jiva Goswami points out that Sridhar Swami's comments are significant in this verse, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has here given the longest commentary of this entire passage. So I'll try to make it quick, but he says the Lord previously promised, Hitvavadyamimam lokam gantamajjanatamasi, giving up this low body, you will become my associate. That was back in text 24. At the time of being made to accept a body which is Shuddha Sattva, because it was not a material body and because it belonged to the Lord, Bhagavatim, my material body, Panchabhautika, fell away. Giving up my material body and attaining a spiritual body were simultaneous, like the expression, I'm walking while the cows are being milked. We've already discussed this. This is called Go Balivarta Nyaya. So, the verb form hitva, giving up, indicates that they're practically simultaneously. Hitva. Giving up this world, and you get the spiritual world. That's the idea. Now, Sridhar Swami says, Anena parshadatunanam akarmarabdhatvam shuddhatvam nityatvam ityadi suchitam bhavati. What is said in this verse is that the bodies of the associates of the Lord are pure, without prarabdha karmas, and they're eternal. Arabdha karma nirvana means that he had destroyed the karmas like fire burning wood. But that means that the prarabdha karmas were not destroyed just now, but previously, because that's what is accomplished by sadhana. I hope this is clear. It's not that the prarabdha karma is destroyed at the time of death. This is the point to be understood. Prarabdha karmas don't remain with devotees who have developed prema bhakti. For those practicing pure bhakti, destruction of prarabdha karma takes place during sadhana bhakti. And he gives as evidence of this, Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, chapter 1, text 35, regarding Priyavrata, where it says, quote, such power is not surprising from persons who have conquered the six senses by the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord, since even an outcast becomes immediately free of bondage of karma by chanting the Lord's name once. Here's the meaning of that verse. It's not so amazing for such a person. What should be amazing? Even an outcast who chants the holy name of the Lord once, at the time of accepting the name, gives up his body. So there are three interpretations that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is giving here. It's complicated, so please listen carefully. He says, some people say that prarabdha karmas which are experienced in the present body, they disappear with the chanting. But we don't see that as soon as a person begins to chant Hare Krishna, that he dies. We do know that if your prarabdha karmas are thoroughly destroyed, you will die, because prarabdha karma we've already established. That's what keeps you in this material body. So Vishwanath Chakravarti is raising this troublesome question. What goes? People are still alive even after they're chanting. So what's the deal? Therefore, others say that by the association of bhakti, like a touchstone, the body made of three gunas becomes free of those gunas. It becomes nirguna, in other words, just as it was the case with Dhruva Maharaj. Therefore, giving up the body means giving up the body made of three gunas. And then he supports that again with another quote from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 29th chapter, text 11. Jahur gunamayam deham sadya prakshina bandhanaha. Free of bondage, the gopis abandon their gross material bodies made out of the gunas. That's the second interpretation. Third, others say that sometimes the Lord shows devotees literally giving up their bodies in order to the opinion of others not be negated. In other words, just because his devotees have said this happens, therefore the Lord makes it happen sometimes, just so that his devotees won't be contradicting themselves. And that's the case with Narad Muni, as stated here in this verse. Taret sodamaniyatha. Just as lightning and illumination, or really literally it says lightning and lightning, happen simultaneously, so it would seem Narad Muni, who had already developed prema, he gave up his material body. However, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur concludes here, it should be understood that he had already destroyed his prarabdha karmas during his practice of bhakti. How do we know this? Rupa Goswami tells us, Yad Brahma Sakshat Kritanishthayapi Vinasham Ayati Vinana Bhogaihi Apaiti Namas Puranena Tate Prarabdha Karmeti Virauti Vedaha. The Vedas declare that although meditation on the impersonal Brahman cannot bring freedom from past karma, O holy name, your appearance at once makes all prarabdha karma disappear. So if the intended meaning, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, was that when Narad's prarabdha karmas were destroyed, his body
Hare Krishna, it seems there's a power failure in Vrindavan. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes, probably will rejoin. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Vasanta Prabhu, could you get any update, Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji is reconnecting now.
Right, Prabhuji joined. Prabhuji joined. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
Okay, good. Sometimes I'm not able to unmute myself, sorry. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Anyway, the long explanation by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, but the gist of it is this. Instead of prarabdha karma nirvana, nyapatat panchabhautika, the verse says arabdha karma. And that's a problem because we're talking about the destruction of prarabdha karma. So his meaning is this general statement. For the devotees, the body which has already destroyed its prarabdha karma, that will fall away, and then he will be left with nothing but his spiritual body. I hope that's clear. But the long explanation was required to bring us to this point. Devotees already destroy their prarabdha karma before death, if they are pure devotees. And it's through chanting the holy name, because that is the effect of the holy name, according to Goswami. Okay, text 29. Kalpanti idamadaya shayanim pasyudanvataha shishayashorano pranam vivishayantaraham vibhoho. Changing gears here. Now he says, at the end of the millennium, when the personality of Godhead Lord Narayana laid down in the water of devastation, Brahma began to enter into him, along with all creative elements, and I also entered through his breathing at the end of the Kalpa. Purport, Narad is known as the son of Brahma, as Lord Krishna is known as the son of Vasudeva. The personality of Godhead and his liberated devotees like Narad appear in the material world by the same process. As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, the birth and activities of the Lord are all transcendental. Therefore, according to authorized opinion, the birth of Narad as the son of Brahma is also a transcendental pastime. His appearance and disappearance are practically on the same level as that of the Lord. The Lord and his devotees are therefore simultaneously one and different as spiritual entities. They belong to the same category of transcendence. Okay. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says here, he raises this question: if you have an eternal body, then why are you known to be born of Brahma and the Swayambhuva Manvantara? Reasonable question. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, chapter 12, text 23, Utsangan Narado Jagye. Narada was born from the deliberation of Brahma, which is the best part of the body. Now we've just been described, Narada has just told us that he has this Shuddha Sattvika Bhagavatim Tanum, transcendental body of Anitya Parshada, so what's the deal? This is the question raised by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Okay, so that's true, he says, but just as the Lord for his particular pastimes enters the womb of Devaki, from the pastimes of being the son of Brahma at the end of the previous kalpa, I entered the body of Brahma. When Brahma withdrew these three worlds, idam adaya, I entered along with his breathing into Brahma, who desired to go to sleep within Narayana, Shayane, who was sleeping in the water on the only ocean, Udandanta. And then he quotes Kurma Purana, Tato Vatirya Vishvatma, Deham Avishya Chakranaha, Avapa Vaishnavim Nidram, Eki Bhuyatha Vishwana. Having appeared, Brahma entered the body of Vishnu, becoming one with Vishnu, and then went into Vishnu's spiritual sleep. Okay. I think that's enough said. Text 30. Sahasra Yuga Paryante Uthayedam Sasrakshataha Manichi Mishra Rishayaha Prane Pyoham Chajagnire. After 4,300,000,000 solar years, when Brahma awoke to create again by the will of the Lord, all the rishis like Marichi, Angira, Atri, and so on were all created from the transcendental body of the Lord. And I also appeared along with them. Report. The duration of a day in the life of Brahma is 4,320,000,000 solar years. This is stated also in Bhagavad Gita. And for the same period, Brahmaji rests at night in Yoga Nidra within the body of Garbhodha Kashayi Vishnu, the generator of Brahma. Thus, after the sleeping period of Brahma, when there is again creation by the will of the Lord through the agency of Brahma, all the great rishis again appear from different parts of the transcendental body, and Narad also appears. This means that Narad appears in the same transcendental body, just as a man awakes from sleep in the same body. Sri Narad is eternally free to move in all parts of the transcendental and material creations of the Almighty. He appears and disappears in his own transcendental body, which is without distinction of body and soul, unlike conditioned beings. Jiva Goswami, one thing he mentions is Nitya Shri Narada Sarupyadikam Praptam. The word Sarupyadikam in this phrase means, in other words, he's saying that Narad Muni has eternal perfections, such as Sarupya Mukti, and implicitly he's applying the other muktis as well. There are 5 kinds of muktis: to have a body similar to the Lord, to live on the same planet as the Lord, to live in the proximity of the Lord, to have equal opulence with the Lord, or to merge into the Lord. So it seems as if Narad Muni has such perfections because the word Adi, etc. is used here. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says at the end of 1,000 yuga cycles, it means at the end of the previous kalpa and beginning of this kalpa. Marichi and other sages Marichi Mishra, and I, Narad speaking, were born from the senses of Brahma. Okay, we're just about finished now. Text 31. Antarbihishtalokam strim paryemya askandita vrataha anugrahan mahavishnur avighata gati kvachita. Since then, by the grace of the Almighty Vishnu, I travel everywhere without restriction, both in the transcendental world and in the three divisions of the material world. This is because I'm fixed in unbroken devotional service of the Lord. Purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, there are three divisions of the material spheres, namely the Urvaloka, topmost planets, Madhyaloka, midway planets, and Adholoka, downward planets. Beyond the Urvaloka planets, that is to say above the Brahmaloka, there are material coverings of the universes. And above that is the spiritual sky, which is unlimited in expansion, containing unlimited self-illuminated Vaikuntha planets inhabited by God himself, along with his associates, who are all eternally liberated living entities. Sri Narad Muni could enter all these planets in both the material and spiritual spheres without restriction, as much as the Almighty Lord is free to move personally in any part of his creation. In the material world, the living beings are influenced by the three material modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. But Sri Narad Muni is transcendental to all these material modes, and thus he can travel everywhere. Unrestricted. He is a liberated spaceman. The causeless mercy of Lord Vishnu is unparalleled, and such mercy is perceived by the devotees only, by the grace of the Lord. Therefore, the devotees never fall down, but the materialists, the fruitive workers, and the speculative philosophers, they do fall down, being forced by their respective modes of nature. The rishis, as above mentioned, cannot enter into the transcendental world like Narad. This fact is disclosed in the Narasingha Purana. The rishis, like Marichi, are authorities in fruitive work. And the rishis, like Sanak and Sanatan, are authorities in philosophical speculations. But Sri Narad Muni is the prime authority for transcendental devotional service of the Lord. Transcendental devotional service of the Lord. All the great authorities in the devotional service of the Lord follow in the footsteps of Narad Muni in the order of the Narad Bhakti Sutra. And therefore, all the devotees of the Lord are unhesitatingly qualified to enter into the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ye karmanas te bahirnayanti, Sridhar Swami says. Those who are karmis, they cannot go out. They cannot go out of what? They cannot go out of this material world. Ye tapa adibir brahmalokam gatas te antarnayanti. And those who are in tapa, the tapasvis and others who are in Brahmaloka, they can't come in. Means they can't come down to this world. Aham tu mahavishnur anugrahat akhandita brahmacharya vrataha san antarbahishta paryemi paryatami. Narad Muni speaks. But me, by the mercy of Mahavishnu, and because I am an unbroken brahmachari, I can go inside, I can go outside as I wish. Kvachidapi avighata pratihata gatiryasya saha. In other words, this is his way of saying that Narad Muni has unrestricted movement. So it's interesting that we have this word that he is used here in the verse. Askandita vrata. Narad Muni is one whose vow is unbroken. What is that vow? According to Sridhar Swami, that vow is the vow of brahmachari, naishtiki brahmachari, akhandita brahmachari. That's Sridhar Swami's opinion, but Jiva Goswami gives a different opinion. Jiva Goswami says, askandita vrato nischala bhagavad bhakti niyamaha As a rigid principle, Narad Muni is completely fixed in unbroken devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kvachit Vaikuntha Davati. And therefore he can go anywhere, in Vaikuntha or wherever he wants. Similarly, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Aham tu akhandita swabhakti nishthasan, which implies the same thing. And therefore it's significant that Srila Prabhupada seems to adopt their definition in his own translation, which we'll read again. Since then, by the grace of the Almighty Vishnu, I travel everywhere without restriction, both in the transcendental world and in the three divisions of the material world. This is because I am fixed in unbroken devotional service of the Lord. So we can see how Prabhupada incorporates that interpretation of the phrase into his own translation. Okay, so this is from Narasingha Purana. Sanakadya nivritakhe teja dharme niyojitaha pratakhe marichadya muktaikam naradam muni. I'm not like Marichi and other sages with material bodies, Narada Muni speaks, under the influence of their own karmas and involved in karma yoga, nor am I like the Kumaras involved in Gyan. This is before the Kumaras became devotees. I am above the path of material engagement and renunciation. That means pravrti, nivriti. I worship the Lord and exist independently. Those who are the karma yogis do not go beyond the universe. Those who have attained Brahman by very difficult austerities, they do not go down into the material universe out of fear of bondage. But I, fixed in continuous devotion to the Lord, travel outside and inside the universe. Or it can also mean outside or inside of Vaikuntha, either way. So the Kumaras are on the path of detachment, Marichi and others are on the path of karma, but only Narad is really liberated. This brings to mind a verse which we'll close with from Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, chapter 17, text 28. Narayana parasarve nakutashtina bibhyati svargapa varga narakeshwa pitulyartha darshanaha. Devotees solely
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Vasanta Prabhuji has joined, Prabhuji.
Okay, sorry. As I was saying, we'll just close by quoting Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, chapter 17. I forget the text number, but Narayana Parasarve Nakutashtin Vibhuti Saragapa Varga Narakeshwa Pitulyartha Darshana. There it's described that devotees, they don't mind going anywhere. Narad Muni can go to Vaikuntha, he can come to the material world, he can go to hell, because his only business in either place is to serve Krishna. And that's bliss anywhere you go. If you're serving Krishna, even in hell, it's still blissful if you have the association of devotees and you're engaged in pure devotional service. So this is what devotees always pray for. And Narad Muni is our foremost exemplar of this principle. So these are just a few things we can say about this particular passage of Narad's life, very fascinating life story. But I'm going to stop here. If anybody has any questions or any comments, you can discuss it as you wish.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. As always, Prabhu, so wonderfully you explained, Prabhu, these verses with the commentary of Acharyas. We're very, very grateful to you, Prabhu. We have some question, Prabhuji. So, Mataji, you can unmute yourself. Kishore Priya Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we started with the 26th text, and it says that, by chanting the holy names of the Lord, I traveled all over the earth, fully satisfied, humble, and unenvious. And we ended with the 31st verse, after he has attained his spiritual body, and he does exactly the same thing. He traveled everywhere. And the only difference is that without restriction, that's the only clause there. So my question is that a symptom of the pure devotee that when they are in this material body, they do exactly the same thing as their spiritual, their constitutional position?
Well, yes and no. I mean, they do the same thing in the sense that just like Srila Prabhupada, we saw that Srila Prabhupada everything he did was just ordinary. Srila Prabhupada was signing checks. Srila Prabhupada was making telephone calls. He was taking prasadam. He was everything. He was taking a walk. All the same things, nothing particularly extra, but the way that he did them was just by looking at him, you could see that this person is not from this world. And, it's like, what do they call that? Aparokshanubhuti. It's not something that it's not coming from your mind or from your intellect or from your senses even, but just on the platform of soul, you can understand this thing. So that's one thing. Devotees are, because they are completely absorbed in transcendental devotional service, they have this transcendental energy, even though they're engaged in apparently ordinary activities. But another way to see it is because they're doing everything for Krishna, therefore their activities are not at all ordinary, because they cannot be stopped. As you said, they're not restricted. Those in the material world are always going to work within the confines of these three modes. Prabhupada has pointed this out in his purports. And we also define one definition of death, or prarabdha, mukti from prarabdha, is that you cease to operate within those parameters because of your absorption and fixity in pure devotional service. So this is what is the difference. Is it answering your question?
Yes, I think it's hard to understand at my level, but yes.
The principle can be understood. A devotee is like, Prabhupada gives the analogy, he has given the analogy in these purports, red hot iron rod within a forge. It's iron, No doubt it's on. Nobody will say it's anything but iron, but it acts like fire because it's practically speaking fire. If you throw that red hot iron rod into a pile of dry straw, definitely it's going to alight. So this is how a devotee is. Not Muni or anyone. Same. Now that's the normal thing, but one thing we should add here about Nada Muni, it seems to me from what I've read here in this passage that Nada Muni, once he quit this material body at the end of the last kalpa, he took his spiritual body, and his spiritual body morphed, if you will, to resemble a material body being born from Brahma, etc., in exactly the same way that Krishna appears to be the son of Vasudeva and everything. In other words, nato natyataro yatha. Just like an actor on the stage is acting out a part, but his own life is something completely different than what he's acting. So it's a little bit like that.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. Anything else?
Prabhu, one question, Prabhu. In the 26th verse, Prabhu, you very beautifully explained about the Tushti Mana, and then you quoted the verse from Bhagavad Gita, Tusyanticha Ramanticha. You also mentioned that once the devotee, they achieve the Siddha Deha, then Ramanticha, they can relish that transcendental bliss. The Tushti Mana at the Sadhika level, Prabhu, that satisfaction. So we also hear, Prabhu, that at the beginning, when we chant or when we hear, this is specifically for the purification of the heart. As we see in the 27th verse, the Amal Atmana.
Yes.
And then the stage comes when we start this being satisfaction, the Tushti Mana, after the purification process. Prabhu, my question is, when Tushti Mana comes, this is a material disposition, or because we also hear that Tatra Laulyam Api Mulyam Eklam. In the spiritual progress, that the hankering, the intense greed, it means, in one sense, not satisfied, because still we want it. So how to understand this Tushti Mana and this
Well,
hankering?
it doesn't fit into the mundane intelligence. It won't work because it's just not like that. But you're right. On one hand, a devotee is completely satisfied only with Krishna consciousness. His satisfaction is that he does not leave the realm of pure Shuddha Sattva ever at any time, because he's satisfied with that. That's his satisfaction. But within that realm, there's all kinds of agitation, especially in Krishna Bhakti. One saint in Vrindavan said, if you want peace, worship Lakshmi Narayan. But if you want bliss, worship Radha Krishna. And the implication is clearly that you will get bliss, but you may not have any peace. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Gopakumar came back to Godhead finally, he was looking around and he could not tell, are these people completely plunged into some, super hyper traumatized, permanent psychosis, or of complete misery, because they're all crying and they're all emaciated and they can't focus on anything, and it just seems like heavy depression of some sort. But on the other hand, he also could intuit that there was just this tremendously deep transcendental ecstasy going on that was practically beyond him. So he couldn't tell the difference. So it in exactly the same way that the pure devotees and the ordinary persons of this mundane world appear to be doing the same things, so in the same way in the spiritual world, it appears that there's a lot of dysfunctional relationships. But actually they're all submerged in this transcendental bliss, and nobody would give it up for a moment. They call it suffering only because that increases the ecstasy. And you're right, there's no way to fit this within our current paradigms, intellectual or mental or emotional paradigms simply cannot accommodate this, because there's no frame of reference in this material world. There cannot be. Is that helping?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhu, one more question is there. Rajendra Kumar, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dandat Pranam Prabhuji. I would like to thank you for this enlightening session. And my question is on 6.30, it is said that when Brahma awoke to create again by the will of Lord, all the races like Marichi, Angira, Atri, and all were created from the transcendental body of Lord. And I also appeared along with them. So here my question come in my mind that is Brahma who create the Narada Muni, or is the or it is created by the Lord himself directly?
Okay, yeah. Right, okay. Well, he says that he appeared also. This is why the Acharyas have given all this commentary, because the point is to show that although Narada Muni is taking birth, just like all these other sages are taking birth, the fact of the matter is that that's all just, it's a show. It's in the same way that the Lord appears to take birth in the Yadu dynasty and appears to be the son of Vasudeva, but actually, no, he has his ontological position.
He has
So
also his
sorry?
He has also his transcendental body, like Lord himself.
And that body is eternal also. This is the point. He's eternally in this sage form, and he's eternally glorifying the Lord in that rasa. So it appears to be an ordinary birth, or it appears to be, a very high birth, but in fact, that's his eternal constitutional position. He's in his siddha deha, masquerading as a sadhaka deha. Is it clear?
Yeah, thank you.
In exactly the same way that the Lord, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary has taken pains to make this parallel very clear. The Lord is coming and appears to be the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, but actually he's eternally in his position as Vrajendranandan. And it may be an eternal Leela also, just like Narada Muni is eternally in that particular form as a so-called sadhaka, but that is actually his siddha deha. There are different forms that one can serve Krishna in. Every one of us has our eternal siddha deha, eternal form. And that form is not different from our own rasa with Krishna. It is the same thing. It is the appearance of that rasa that we possess. We say possess, but actually it's what we are. In the spiritual world, there's no difference between the body and the soul. This is the point. In the material world only, that difference is there because it's an artificial distinction. But actually in the normal condition of spiritual consciousness, everyone is their body. The problem is that when we come to this material world as a result of our infected hearts, we try to maintain that same conception here in this world, and it doesn't work because this isn't the real world. This is the prison. So if you try to be your body in this material world, you suffer. We mentioned already, when we talk about death amongst the devotees, it's no problem. Devotees look forward to it because they're getting freed from jail. But when you talk about death with the non-devotees who are trying to deny it and cover it up and hide it, even from themselves, then it becomes an unacceptable proposal. You cannot discuss this. Try this when you go to work on your lunch break. Just try bringing up the topic of death every day and see what happens. People will start thinking you're weird. But we're talking about death every day when we're hearing about bhagavatam. It's necessary, and we look forward to it, and it's no problem. Because we have our consciousness in the right place. But if your consciousness is invested in this material world, then of course you're going to be miserable. Jatasihi dhruvam mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha. Everything here has a beginning and an end. Adi antavanta kante anateshu ramate buddha. Anyway, I don't want to ramble too much, but is that helping?
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, one more last question we'll take.
Okay.
Yashwanath Prabhu, please, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Dharma Pranam Prabhuji, that you will notice me. Prabhu, in your discourse, you just described anodi verse Kamadi Nam Katina Katida. In that, the last line comes Abhayam Mam Niyungshu Atmadasya. So where the prayer is, please engage me in your personal service and save me. So usually we are taught like the mood of Lord Chaitanya is Gopi Bhartur Pad Kamala Yor Das Dasanudas. And here, Srila Rupa Goswami, he is praying like to engage me in your direct service. So for us, how to understand these two the understandings, Prabhu? Like,
Oh, you're seeing a contradiction?
not contradiction, but to just to understand both the statements.
Okay, so you may be asking what it seems like we're praying for Madhurya Rasa and Dasya Rasa at the same time.
Yeah, here he's just asking for the direct service of the Lord.
Okay, yes. Mam Niyam Shvatma Dasya, yes. Okay, well, the thing is that there's a couple of ways to look at this. Number one, while we are sadhakas, aspiring only for devotional service, and particularly through meticulous adherence to sadhana bhakti, then the default norm is always going to be dasya bhava, because that is the platform of generic bhakti. And that's really, we have to try to master that in the beginning before we can even consider anything else. So that's one thing. But secondly, even in the higher rasas, even in Sakhya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, Madhurya rasa, this element of dasya bhav will still be there. Therefore, we get Radha Dasyam, for example, amongst all the gopis, Radharani's friends, they still maintain this consciousness of being the servant, but they're serving Srimati Radharani. And the purpose of the service is understood to be this Madhurya Rasa, that Srimati Radharani can give the highest pleasure to Krishna, and I can try to assist her in that. So it's not really a contradiction, and it's not really even something separate. It's just a question of how you direct the Dasya Bhav. But the Dasya Bhav will always be there on any level. In your Siddha Rupa, the Dasya Bhav will remain, and in your Sadhaka Rupa, the Dasya Bhav will also be there. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for your valuable time, Prabhuji, and wonderful association. And we look forward, Prabhu, in the near future. All together, we'll express our gratitude to Prabhu for such a wonderful class by Hare Krishna Mahamantra, chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra and Vaishnava Pranam Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare